Hey, it is Kenny from Kenny's Audiophile Record Reviews. Thank you very much for viewing my channel. Please like and subscribe. I sincerely appreciate that. In this video, I'm going to reveal the listening comparison results that I did for listening to a mono record on a stereo cartridge, but using a preamplifier that has a mono stereo switch on it, so I could switch back and forth between listening to this mono record on a stereo turntable with a stereo cartridge. I can switch back and forth listening to that mono record on this preamplifier with the mono stereo switch and see the listening or the sound differences between the two modes. And I'm also going to compare listening to a mono record with the stereo cartridge with the mono switched set to mono, and I'm going to compare that to using actual mono cartridge on a different turntable, and I'm going to compare the two, and that was pretty interesting, the results. But my turntable that I use is Riga P8, Riga P8 turntable with a FETA 3 cartridge. And my normal preamplifier, which is a Past Labs X2 preamplifier, does not have a mono stereo switch or button. But I have a backup preamplifier, which is a McIntosh C-28 preamplifier, and that has a mono stereo switch. So I was able to switch back and forth and listen to the differences in the sound quality, depth, dimension, and sound stage of listening to a mono record in the stereo mode and in the mono mode engaged, and it was pretty interesting. But just a few of the records that I used during this listening test is Miles Davis Sketches of Spain, and this is the original Columbia 6i mono pressing of the record. And I also used this Tony Bennett Long Ago Far Away record. This is an excellent sounding record in mono, I learned by going through this listening test. And this is, again, another Columbia 6i mono record. But when I first started listening to Miles Davis, the Miles Davis Sketches of Spain record in stereo, his trumpet in stereo mode seemed just a little bit distorted during certain sections of the record, certain songs. And when I switched to mono, the mono switch to mono, the sound stage, at least in terms of depth and a little bit of width, opened up in terms of width and depth, and it was more detailed. The distortion in Miles Davis's trumpet, for the most part, disappeared. It was more clear. It was just a more beautiful, more enjoyable listening experience, listening to this mono record using a stereo cartridge with the preamplifier switched to mono. It greatly improved the listening experience. It was, like I said, it was a more detailed, more you could pick out instruments better in a three-dimensional space in the mono sound stage. And when it was in stereo, it seemed somewhat flat. The sound stage, it didn't seem to have depth to it. But with a mono switch set to mono, it was more depth in the music. It was more grand and more beautiful, more pleasurable listening experience, listening with the mono switch engaged. And the reason why I came to this listening results test to begin with, because a lot of people in these message boards on his websites state that is a solution, is to listen with the mono records with a mono switch engaged, and it will greatly improve the listening experience. And it does. It's much better than listening to it in stereo mode, especially with these older records. Listen to these mono records in stereo mode, these older records, does not do these records proper justice, I've learned. Listen to it with a mono switch engaged. Like I said, it opens up the depth dimension of soundstage and detail a lot more than listen to it in stereo mode. Now, when I compare the mono switch with a stereo cartridge to a mono cartridge on a different turntable, this is my Audio-Technica AT33 mono. There's a box for it. I purchased a couple of weeks ago, and I've been listening to it a lot lately, or often I should say. And that's set up on a different turntable. That's set up on a Technics SP15 turntable. It's a dedicated turntable where I can remove the head shell easy, put you know, any head shell on there I want. At the moment, it has that cartridge in it. Now, when I compare listen to a mono record with this Audio-Technica AT33 mono cartridge, when I compare listen to the cartridge to listen to a record with a mono switch, the cartridge, listen to a mono record with a mono cartridge, the mono cartridge takes it to another dimension that the mono switch just simply wasn't capable of. It took it to another dimension in terms of width of soundstage, depth of soundstage, detail of soundstage. It was more realistic. It was more, you know, the intricacies of the music was more revealed with the mono cartridge than the mono switch. Using the equipment I have and the speakers I have, in my opinion, it was more grand listening to mono records with the mono cartridge than it was listening to mono records with a stereo cartridge with a mono switch. It was just flat out better. When I was listening to this Tony Bennett record with the mono cartridge, it almost felt like the orchestra in Tony Bennett was almost like it was the closest thing to being there without being there. Let me put it that way. It was just a beautiful experience. That mono record, I was highly impressed with that record. I was really highly impressed by that Tony Bennett, this album, long ago and far away. Listen to this record with a mono cartridge was a grand experience, much better than with the mono switch. But for those, my conclusion is the mono cartridge is a more grand and more enjoyable and the more superior experience in terms of listening to mono music via mono records. You know, using the mono cartridge, I should say. It's a more grand experience using a mono cartridge when listening to mono records. And I will say this is not a high-end mono cartridge, by the way. It's a great mono cartridge, but I can't imagine listening to this on something that's much better than that. See, I can improve on the mono experience by buying a better mono cartridge. With a mono switch, you're fixed in that situation, and there's nothing you can do about it. But using a mono cartridge, you can improve on the listening experience by upgrading the cartridge. So I think the mono cartridge has an advantage. But for people who can't afford a mono cartridge or don't have a lot of mono records and don't have the desire to invest in a mono cartridge, I think the mono switch, for those of you who have one in your integrated amplifier or preamplifier, it's a great solution to listen to mono records over listen to mono records with a stereo cartridge. So in my conclusion, in my opinion, if you're going to listen to mono records, if you can afford it, I'd go out and purchase a really good mono cartridge. But having a preamplifier or integrated amplifier with a mono switch is a good alternative to not having a mono cartridge. And it's much better than listening to mono records on a stereo cartridge. Especially with these older records, I would recommend either the mono switch or mono cartridge, one of the two. It'll just open up the listening experience, make it more beautiful, enjoyable, and grand. But those are my listening results and opinions. Like I said, that's using my equipment, my ears, and my speakers. So listening results, depending on the equipment you're using, could vary. But please leave your comments in the comment section below. If you've done this same listening experiment, please leave your comments in the comment section below. Thank you for viewing my video. Please like and subscribe. That would help me out. God bless, strong love, and peace to all worldwide.